episode of the Hot Rods and Hand Grenades podcast, hosted by Explosive Customs. We got a special guest in the house tonight, Heath Moore, of Heath Moore Interiors. You might know him from the TV show Texas Metal, the interior guy on the show.
Yeah, that's what they call me.
crazy, wild shit, all sorts of lighting and crazy things that just, you make it look easy.
Definitely not easy, but yeah, I give it my best.
For the people that don't know a whole lot about you, where'd you get your start?
Man, what got me going is when I was young, I guess probably about 12, 13, it started with car audio because my dad had a boat and he had a radio and he was working all the time, and I kept wanting to put this radio in this boat, and so I put the radio in and it made noise. And I was like, wow, I did that. I mean, I didn't build the radio, but, I put it in and it made noise, and I was really impressed. And so I started tearing apart home speakers and put it in my dad's truck. And then when I got my own truck, I just started going from there. And then I got creative with it and started, before you knew it, all my friends, coming around and saying, can you build me a box? Can you put an amp in for me? And it just took off.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's nuts.
It all starts with something so simple.
Yeah. I mean, and what's crazy is, in high school, I was horrible. I couldn't stand school. But I had a creative side that I always, I'd draw on the test, and, I didn't give a crap about school, man. I didn't think I was learning anything. I always thought they were just building employees.
Yeah.
And that's not who I am, And so I had an opportunity actually to go in the Navy, and because I tested like the very top 1% in ASVAB, in the military ASVAB.
Okay.
And I sounded fancy. They came to me and they said, we want to make you a nuclear engineer. I was like, wow. You see my grades, right? What are you thinking? I thought you guys are supposed to be smart, and it's just, I found out after I did the physicals and everything that basically it was a submarine mechanic. Working on a nuclear submarine. I had to be underwater for 2 years at a time, and I was just like, man. And they wanted me to they were going to pay me to go to school for 4 years, right? And then after those 4 years, back then they were going to pay me to go to school. And you got to remember, this is back in 87, 88. They were going to pay me like almost $40,000 a year to go to school. And then after I got out, they're going to pay me like $80-something thousand a year to be on a submarine. A lot of money for, an 18-year-old, back then, but it had to go 8 years. And so I asked him, I remember asking the recruiter, I'm like, man, so what happens? See, you can see my record with school and truancy and, disciplinary problems. I said, what happens if I decide while I'm going to school that I just don't want to do this anymore? I said, am I going to end up sweeping floors or whatever for 8 years? He said, absolutely. I said, man, it's a good thing I don't think I passed the physical because I busted knees, and when they had to drop down to the ground, I had a hard time getting back up, and so they were going to work around it, but I said, no need, because I don't want to be sweeping floors. I know my attitude, and I know where I'm going to end up, and so, man, I ended up moving to Miami, and I was always working on cars, and that's actually a pretty cool story, when I was in Miami, in the car stereos, and I had, back before JL Audio was even really a thing, I ended up meeting the guys. They owned a company called Speaker Warehouse, and they were working on JL Audio. Like, they had some amps that looked kind of like linear amps and stuff back in the day, and they were just really getting started, but they were going to a lot of sound competitions, and I was actually in their dumpster on a Sunday, and I'm trying to find stuff they threw away. Yeah, I'm like, yeah, something broke, I can fix it, I'm going to make it cool. And then, I didn't have a lot of money, so I'm going to make it, what I could do. And he caught me, this guy, Tim. I think his name was Tim Lublin or whatever. He was like the manager or whatever was running the stereo shop. And he goes, man, don't do that. He goes, come in here. And he brought me in and was showing me what they did. And I think he gave me like an amp or something, and he goes, man, go hook this up. Tell me what you think. It's our R&D stuff. And so I always felt really honored, and it was really cool that I was there, when the JL Audio thing really started kicking off, and then whenever I moved back to Texas, everybody was like Rockford Fosgate this and this and that, and I'm like JL Audio,
Yeah.
and they're like, what the hell is that crap, But then it really blew up, and it became like a thing, and I always felt honored, although people probably didn't believe me, but it happened. We were coming back from Key West, and I had a little Ford Ranger, and the voltage regulator went out on it. Now, I don't know if you've ever driven to Key West, but it's a big, long bridge. I broke down on the bridge, and they brought me a battery and put it in my truck so I could get off the damn bridge. So good guys, man. Good guys. Yeah, awesome. It was cool. Yeah.
So we're happy to have you here. This is year 2 having you back in town.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah.
Got to travel around a little bit with some of our, our friends and your friends. And,
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
A lot of people don't realize that you do a whole lot more than interiors.
Yeah.
A whole lot more than car audio.
Yeah, used to, especially. Not as much anymore, but I offer, I guess, a little bit because of all the experience that I've had. I mean, I've been a body man, a painter, a little bit of mechanic work, but a welder, a little machine work. I mean, so it kind of tends to lend its hand to what I do. There's not many interior guys that can build seat frames and, and can, weld the metal mounts together. And, and I turn my drill press into a mill, you know what I mean? And I've got the XY slider on it, and I can mill stuff out if I need to. And, most people, your average upholstery guy isn't going to know how to do that. I'm not sure there's some are, but there are very few.
Yep.
So
we know one down the road, but
yeah, I know you're talking about world renowned. Yeah, nothing like him. But
no, that's another level right there.
Yeah.
But it is a rare breed. You don't see very many.
Exactly, and that's what I tell. Like I've always said, you always learn as much as you can in anything you do. And I always tell my daughter, I said, if you work for somebody, you learn as much as you can. You be the best in that whole outfit. Whatever you're doing. You're working the fast food line, you be the baddest dude or chick in her case, in the fast food line.
Yeah.
I said, because me, I guess it's personal, it's a selfish thing, because it allows you to get away with more.
Yep.
Because if you're valuable, you can be like, hey boss, I ain't coming in today. He's gonna go, man, hope you're gonna feel better without you even saying anything. Hope you feel better. Can't wait to have you back. But if you're a slacker, you're fired.
Exactly.
So yeah, it makes a big difference, man. And it's all those skill levels. Everything that I've learned is actually, got me to where I'm at today, as far as being able to be different, be creative, and like I said, offer different things. Like most of my stuff, people that know what I build can tell it's mine. Because like we had discussed before, it's like I don't use a lot of templates that are store-bought. I don't use any store-bought templates. I make my own, and usually when I make all my templates, because you got to do multiples, left and right, everything. But I'll ask the customer if they want them. If not, I try to store them in case something breaks or something that we've got to replace for them.
Yeah.
But it's one-off. I try to tell my customers whenever they get something built for me, I never build the same thing twice. And so if you really think about it, it's like a one-off piece of art.
Yeah.
It's handmade. Right now, I have no employees besides my daughter help me every now and then. It's hand-built by me, every single piece, designed by me, built by me. You know what I mean? So I'm hoping that holds some kind of value,
You mean you don't have 50 people working in the shop? You sit with your feet up on the desk? And, somebody orders an interior, it's done in 3 weeks and out the door, and it's instantaneous.
That's my 5-year plan, but not there yet. The rate I'm going, I'll be lucky to have the amount of cars I got now out in 5 years.
That's kind of where we're at.
Yeah, it gets rough. But my plan is, I want to expand at a certain point. But you run into what me personally I've ran into is, if you do find somebody at the skill level, it's a different style, And as far as my business goes, they come to me because of my style. Yep. At least that's what I believe, and because I'm unique. And so I have to train that person, even with the skill, to build my style. At least while they're working for me, they can go do whatever they want, after hours. But while you're working for me, it has to be my style, Otherwise, I believe I'm doing a disservice to my customer.
Yeah.
And that's happened because I had 2 employees at this time, and had a customer actually came in to pick up his car, and I had them build a few of the pieces. I wasn't really 100%, in love with it, but you need to get paid, and so I'm like, not going to pay their salary, and everything else, and I'm like, it's good enough, which isn't a good thing to say, but it was good enough. And so the customer sat in the car, and he looks and he goes, I'm going to tell you something. He goes, I'm going to give you your money. That's not a good thing to hear in the very beginning, when he's picking up his car, because the but's coming right after it. And he said, but I can tell what you did, and I can tell what your guys did. He goes, you didn't do this, you didn't do this, and you didn't do this. He goes, but I understand, you're running a business.
Yep.
He goes, but I'm going to tell you right now, if it's going to be this way, because I'm not coming back. That broke my heart, dude, And right then, that day when he left, I fired both of them. Not mean or anything, just like, sorry guys, can't do this. It's just not going to work, because I can't afford to go and redo everything and pay them too.
Yeah, exactly.
It just doesn't work that way. And so since then, I've been by myself.
Okay.
And like I said, I'm working on it. I'll get some more people involved. But
it's hard, and I mean, past events with the whole world, the whole country, everything like that. I mean, there's no question about it. A lot of things have taken a lot of the work ethic out of society,
mm-hmm.
and we're struggling with that same thing. It's hard for us to find help. There's just 3 of us here, and you know all of us.
Yeah.
It's difficult
yeah.
to get everything done in a day.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you got to borrow time from tomorrow and use what's left over from yesterday as well.
Exactly.
But to what you said, I mean, we do deal with a lot of that. I think we kind of have a style around here as well.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of things leave with kind of a signature to it.
Exactly.
And my brother's metalwork,
that's
something that, I really push to see that now if we are making brackets and,
mm-hmm.
any sort of framework or notches or anything like that, it's, as the name continues to grow, you're going to know that it's ours, and you're going to know that Kyle's the guy that put his hands on it. He's the guy that did it. There's a level of expectation that we have for ourselves, and
mm-hmm.
And then the body department. Certainly we've taken a lot of jobs that we wouldn't have wanted to have or anything like that necessarily, or did something that you take a job on that, like you said, you got to get paid, so you bring something in that's not quite going to be the level of what you're looking to do, but.
Yeah, you don't put those on social media.
No, and there's a lot that we don't.
And nothing against those customers either, man. It's
not at all. Everybody's got a budget, and you have to work within
mm-hmm.
the budget of the client, and certainly we're not just gonna sandbag the job just because they don't have the budget for it. But there's only so much that you can do,
mm-hmm.
material wise and things like that. If you can use that budget and buy better materials, well, now you got to figure out how to save the labor time.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can use maybe some cheaper materials for them, but you can go a little bit further with the prep and the fabrication and things like that, the work will show through a little bit better. And try to fit the budget.
And what's crazy too is that you actually go further for those, because you kind of feel bad, because you don't, like you said, you don't want to shortcut them.
No.
And say, I know you didn't pay much, but I really got to get this done right, as best as I can.
Because your name's still on it when that goes out the door.
Exactly.
Nobody asked what their budget was. Nobody asked, what corners they wanted cut, or what level of quality they were going for. The only thing they asked for is who did that interior or who painted that car.
Exactly.
Yeah. And there's no conversation in between there.
And in the end, you agreed to do it.
Yep.
And I come back to it all the time, man. And I've got customers that get upset with me and that because I take too long, and a lot of times it's budget related. A lot of times I'm just overloaded. But I did it too. But I nobody to be mad at. I don't make any excuses for it, man. It's me. I used to have a real bad problem with just saying yes to everybody. You know.
Me too.
Yeah. And I've learned, a little late. I'm a little thick in the head sometimes. It's taken me a long time to understand that sometimes it's more beneficial to say no. Yeah. Because you don't hurt people's feelings and you don't break relationships, because you try to take something in thinking that, yeah, man, I'll be able to get to, I'll work a few hours here. I'll come in on Sunday, I'll do this, but then family comes up and you can't get to it. And I can't enjoy the time with my family because while I'm with my family, I'm beating myself up about being behind on my work and I should be there at work. But then I'm like, no, I need to be here with my family. And I'm not enjoying myself, in either aspect of it, And so it's good when I can get out of that, that usually comes from completing some small task at least, when, as well as me, when you got big jobs that take, months or sometimes even years to accomplish, you're like, when am I going to be done?
Yeah.
Sometimes
it feels like there's no light at the end of the tunnel.
Exactly. And that's why I try to set for myself. I don't even look weekly, man. I kind of briefly look at weekly when I want to get done for the week, but I hit daily. Yeah. That's the only way I can keep my sanity is to be like, okay, today I think I can get this done, and I don't set my goals low. I set them, if I think it's going to take me, 12 hours, I'm going to try to get it done in 10 that day. Yeah. And so if I get it done, then hell yeah. I got done when I needed to get done for the day. I feel good, good for what I did for the day because I'm not thinking about all the stuff I got to do. The rest of I got this done today. Yay, pat myself on the back, Yeah. But I think that's what a lot of us, in this industry, from talking with you and talking with other people, it's a struggle when you have this passion. And I don't have a business manager, I don't have a shop manager, and you have to take on all the business aspect of it. You've got to, like I tell people, I wear way more multiple hats than a lot of business owners. Yeah. I do all my own social media. I do all my own, I do all my design work on my shirts. I do all my, we press our own shirts. We do all my own invoicing. I do all my parts running. I do everything. I do all my own estimates. I answer all my own emails. I do all my own sketches. I live it basically 24/7. So even if I'm not at the shop, up here, it's always going. Yep. And then I usually screw up and try to invent something new. Yeah. Like with my shotgun handles, I invented that. And then now that's kind of, I'm a horrible businessman because I don't like to advertise them. Because when I do, then I got to build a bunch of them.
And you can't keep up with the orders. Yeah.
And so now I've got, I'm already overloaded at work. And then now, I'll advertise it and I get 20 sets of shotgun handles come in. Yeah. And I'm like, yay. But, crap. Now I got to build them.
Yeah. And I can't work on this car now.
Yeah. So now I got to take, and it takes a little while. That's why they're not cheap. It takes a little while to build them. And the parts aren't cheap. I use like machine grade, it's CNC parts that are made to run trolleys on CNCs and all that is what I use. And so it's not cheap and it takes a while. And I can't, I've had people offer to go, hey, let me take it on, man. Let me build them for you. You know what I mean? You just promote, get the orders, but then I'm not controlling it.
Yeah.
And I don't know how much they're going to sell. I'm going to go off of what they tell me. Yeah. Oh, we had a bad month. And then meanwhile, I'm having people calling me saying they got issues with them or something like this, and I'd rather keep it in-house, at least for now. If it gets to, I'm doing $1,000 a month, I can't do it, but.
Yeah, but maybe you can bring somebody in under your roof.
Yeah.
To do all the assembly, and at least you still have some control over watching that.
Exactly. Well, I got my daughter right now doing most of the fab on it.
Okay.
Yeah, I set up all the jigs, I built all the jigs. And so she comes in, and it took her a little while to, she's a girly girl, but kind of got a manly attitude sometimes. But she's to get her tactile things working, as far as how to hold things and drill them and how to pop rivet. Like she loves the pop rivets. I'm joking, she can't stand them, but it's like to try to get pop rivets to go in and to grasp the concept. It takes her a little while, but she's getting it, and I know no matter what, she's gonna try her best to help her dad, and I just got to go over and try to quality check everything I can, yeah, it's definitely fun, you know. Like once again, I messed up, and I came up with a new design on them. And man, I was surprised as anyone. It was for a customer of mine. I said, man, I got an idea. I said, I want to take my original shotgun handle, and I want to, you know how like the armrest that comes up on a lot of sports cars where you can grab to pull, right? I said, I'm going to put another slider up top, right? And then you'll pull that part. You know, you better grab that part and pull the whole thing back. And I put a video up, and it got almost 2 million views on Facebook, right? And my emails are going insane. Phone going off the hook, and everybody wanted that one. I'm like, dude, that's not production. That was a one-off thing. Like, I shouldn't even posted it.
Yeah, this one's way more work to build over and over.
Yeah, because like I'd have to make them a template to line everything up and all that stuff too. I mean, I can make the sliders and do all that stuff, but I got to make a template and then trust that they're going to install it correctly.
Yeah.
You know, so I'm like, I'll work on that. I'll get back to you. You know?
Yeah. And it's tough to come up with something that you can do that with.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a product that you can make over and over again, and you can sell it at a consumer level where they can take it, and with very limited, you always have to assume that the person doing the installation has very limited skill set,
exactly,
and very limited knowledge on putting things together,
and limited tools too. Yeah,
exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, it's hard for me to assume that everybody's got the mountain of tools that we have here. I mean, it just doesn't work like that. And I'm sure the same for you.
Exactly.
I did those iPad dashes for a while,
and
you know, I still take orders on them from time to time, but when I first started out, man, we did one in Kyle's dually and got it ready for Daytona Truck Meet, and he had an indoor spot at Ocean Center.
Yeah.
When they were doing it was one of the earlier years in Daytona when the show first really started growing.
Uh-huh.
And we did it on his truck, and man, that truck made magazines, and that truck was all over the internet, and that dash, everybody had to have them. So he marketed them things, and I think we left at like 6:30 or 7 o'clock in the morning to leave out of Cape Coral, where our family's at, to drive up to Daytona for the show. And I think I was putting the finishing touches on it, putting it in the truck at like 4 a.m. You know, just last second, we're like, let's put an iPad in the dash.
Yeah.
So, you know, we got all that done, and people wanted to have them. And it was only for the OBS Ford pickup trucks.
Yeah,
You know, had to keep it simple, keep it marketed.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and those trucks have a strange setup for the dash, that padded dash pad and everything, and just a singled in radio. And since then, there's some cool radios that have come out. Now you got Apple CarPlay and a singled in slot with a full screen. It's all touch, and you know, so that's nice. You don't have to hack nothing up. You just put it in and go. But my goal with that was the same kind of thing. I wanted to do something that they could order it from me. I could ship it anywhere in the world, and it could be installed very easily, just as easy as you took the original one out.
Exactly.
So it turned into that, and I mean, I did hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of these things.
Yeah.
You know, maybe into the low thousands. I don't know.
Yeah.
But how many people have OBS Fords? I mean, I think I did one for just about everybody that wanted or could afford to do one of them. They were cheap for what they were, but it was fun. And then I wanted to take it a step further. You know, we had a guy that wanted to do an upholstered one with nice, stitching on it and everything like that. And we ended up not doing it because he had somebody that was going to do it. So we just sent it to him in primer, and then he had it upholstered from there. But then I started thinking, I'm like, man, I could offer these things like that.
Yeah.
But then I got to find a guy that's going to do it. He's going to do a nice template, going to stitch it nice every time. This thing's going to go out the door, and I'm going to trust that it actually looks good.
Yeah.
And it just added to the complication. You know, it was just too much.
Exactly.
So we went back to just keeping them simple. Our paint system, we can do interior colors, and it's all hardened, and it's nice and durable, and we can match pretty much any factory interior color on the planet.
Yeah.
So we did pretty much one of every color offered on those mid-90s Fords, and it was good. But now I don't take as many of them anymore, and I did see that I've got a couple message requests on Instagram again that I got to get those going on, and reply back to a few of those people, because I still get them every now and then, and it's just not something. With everything else we got going on, it's hard because I build them, and I had somebody that we brought in to start doing them before, and Kyle can do them as well. But if Kyle's building an iPad dash, Kyle's not cutting and welding and running the plasma table and all that stuff and building everything that we're building. So, you know, we've evolved onto some other things, and it's hard to set the time aside to do that. And now I don't have the time all day like I did. I want to go home and see my little girl.
Exactly.
So.
Yeah. Congratulations on that too, man. She's awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah. And people don't. People think. I think they think like, especially with me. And you've had a little bit of TV stuff too. They think like I'm rich and I've got an army of people, that are working for me. And dude, in all honesty, I used to always think that, until I actually experienced it.
Yeah.
Like I used to. Anybody who was on TV, man, they're famous and they're rich. You know what I mean? It is not the truth. I've met a lot of people on TV since, and there's very few that are actually well off like that.
Yeah.
So, some are smarter businessmen than me, and we're able to take it to that level. Able to get financing and that to help push it to a certain level. But I've always kept it kind of simple, and it's just been, I don't have any traditional. I don't bank finance anything for payroll or anything like that. It's just I bring the jobs in, I get paid for the work, and that's it. And it's hard to expand from that point
when you're only working with the money you're bringing in and out the door.
Exactly, man. I got my light bill's due in 2 days, man, and I'm not talking regular light bill. It's about to get shut off.
Yeah. There.
Yeah, and so I'm like, man, I really got to get this done so I can get paid. And that's when, hey, you'll see a shotgun handle thing go up, and I'm like, crap, too many of them. Because I'm real bad about it. I won't. Like a lot of these guys, they'll bill their customers when they haven't done any work to it or anything like that. And I'm not gonna lie, there's been, I've had cars sometimes they sat for a couple months at least and not touched them because I'm working on other projects. But I don't bill them. You know what I mean? I know a lot of guys that do still. I may touch it a little bit and try to, get some money out of it. I don't believe in that. I'll go broke before I lie to them.
Yeah.
And try to get some money out of them. I'll find another way, Now, I do want my money when I've done some work, you know what I mean? But it's, I guess my whole point is it's not what people think, it's fun. I don't want to sound depressing at all. It's fun, and I really feel good, and I'm very passionate about what I do, and I like to be unique. And that feeling once it's done, and to see the look on their face, and they kind of feel like Santa Claus, It's like they're smiling, and it's good. But I've had a couple customers that love it, but they just got poker faces, dude. And it kind of makes me mad. I'm like, come on, dude, give me something,
Zero expression.
Yeah, they'll pay you and go, thanks. Basically like, yeah, you did your job, so what? Here's your money. You know what I mean? They're like, man, I want something out of you.
This is art to me.
Yeah. That was 3 months, dude, What the hell? But, different strokes, I guess.
Yeah.
But I know if I'm happy with it, then, and they paid me, so they were happy with it, So it's always fun. I think there's just, like I said, my thing is it's not what everybody thinks. There's days when, and this is for other guys who are in the business too, man, to just let everybody know you're not the only one. There's days when you go in, you go, man, this is difficult. I've got a lot of responsibility. I've got a lot of stuff I need to take care of. And to be creative in that environment, I'm here to tell those guys right now, you're a strong dude, man. If you can push through that, you're a select few people in this world that can do that, to maintain your creativity, to get past and get over, your anxiety, your depression, anything like that, to get over that and still perform. You're stronger than you think, bro.
That's a real thing too, man. I mean, it's, like you said, when that light bill's due, and it's because, they're ready to shut it off, or, the gas to keep the place heated, or, you got payroll coming up in a couple days for employees, and you're not at a billable cycle on a couple of big jobs or something like that.
Exactly.
And that's when you find out, what you're made of, if you can weather out a lot of those storms, and, dealing with, there's no question about it. I mean, people are very picky, and that's good, because it pushes you to do the absolute best you possibly can. But there's always a few that you just can't please everybody. And, it's all about learning how to do away with those people and,
Mhm.
you know, right place, right time sometimes for things. You know, you never know who you're going to meet and where, you know, depending on where you're at. I mean, I'm a firm believer. I'm good to everybody around me.
Exactly.
Because
Mhm.
that person might know somebody or have a resource that can benefit me, and
Build a
I may have
relationship,
some
yeah.
that'll benefit them, and they can become a great friend, great client. You never know.
Well, I mean, when I first met you, you know, I was waiting on my daughter to come out of the bathroom in Westgate Hotel. I remember, and you walked up. Hey, you're that interior guy from that TV show, you know. And I'm like, yeah, what's up, man? We kind of talked and that a little bit, and the next thing you know, I think talked a little bit on Facebook or something, and then I saw you the next year.
Yep.
And then we just started hanging out at SEMA together, you know, and look where we are now. You know, now we're doing a podcast together.
And you're our celebrity guest.
Yeah.
Second year in a row.
Honored, man. Yeah.
Our local show, and you know, it's a good time. And I mean, even that whole thing, meeting you. I mean, that was, you know, you talked about the TV stuff, and you know, for me, that was right time, right place kind of deal. For even ended up there because you know, I had a buddy that called up and they needed help with a vehicle on a show, and
cool.
You know, so I agreed to help, and you know, that was, I don't know, a week of time for less than 30 seconds on TV for that. And, you know, but the great thing with that was, you know, that show after that became a client of mine.
Mm-hmm.
And behind the scenes, I did so much paint work.
Yeah.
You know, and it was, you know, it was one of those deals where they call up and they're like, hey, if we call you up, are you going to be able to free your schedule up? Because, you know, we only shoot for a week.
Mm-hmm.
So if we need some paint work done, like, we need it done now.
Yeah, quick.
So, absolutely. Did quite a few jobs for them. Go pick them up, get everything done, bring it back.
Yeah.
You know, and nobody ever knew about that, and I didn't care about that.
Yeah.
It was just, I got to get the stuff done, got to meet some great people.
Well, you built some relationships out of it.
Absolutely, and I'm still friends with most of the guys from that show today. We talk all the time, and they're going to be on here. They may come out to the show.
That's awesome.
And, you know, it's been great. And then I ended up at that Motor Trend event.
Yeah.
You know, with them. That's how I ended up.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Meeting you. So.
Yeah, man, I think God puts people in places where they need to be.
Yeah.
Like I tell my daughter that all the time. I'm like, you know, if it's not meant to be, it's just not meant to be. That goes with me purchasing a car or motorcycle or a hat, you know, whatever I need to purchase, even on purchases. If I'm trying to buy something and it doesn't happen, I don't get upset. I'm just like, well, it wasn't meant to be. Yeah, it wasn't for me. And like one of the things, like I always believe in, you can call it fate, you can call it God, whatever you believe in. You know, I'm personally Christian, and I believe, you know, God does this. And I don't know if you saw, I was famous on Netflix even with it, where, you know, I walked in on a robbery, and they put it was on I Survived a Crime. I think it was what it was called on Netflix.
Okay.
Well, I would have been in the place during the robbery, and I don't know how I would have reacted if I was in there, you know, but if it wasn't for me missing my exit, and I go to this place all the time, it wasn't like I didn't know where I was going, and I get all my tires from them, and I was driving down the freeway, and in my head, you know, going over business stuff and stressing, and I got to do this and this and this, and I kind of forgot where I was going, and drove, and I was like, oh, what the hell, man, I passed up my exit. So then I exited and turned around. Well, that added an extra, like, you know, 5 minutes to my trip. So by the time I got there, the robbery was freshly under progress, you know, it was happening. And I'd walked in, and I didn't know what was going on, but I saw on the counter, oh, there's change and everything everywhere, and I'm like, that's weird. And they have like busted, you know, like rolls of quarters and stuff. And I hear somebody yelling from upstairs. He's like, go in the bathroom. And I'm like, who the hell is he talking to? Go in the bathroom. And I just kind of like, he was talking to me, but I didn't know it because they had cameras, monitors or whatever upstairs, and saw there was somebody down there.
Oh, okay.
And I didn't know it. So then the wife of the owner comes walking down with her hands up. And I'm going, what the hell's going on? And she's saying, trying to tell me something. And then I see a gun in her back. And she goes, run. That. I was like, gone, man. You know? And it was funny about that is, you know, they left, and luckily nothing happened. And, you know, a lot of people called me a punk for not doing anything about it. And I'm like, I don't know how many people, I don't know what was going on, you know. And she told me run, so I'm running, you know. And I got out, and it came out on the local news. You know, it was on the local news, and I had people texting me and calling me, and and even Bill from the show, he called me. He goes, "Man, I ain't ever seen you move that fast in your life." I said, "Skedaddle." He didn't skedaddle. You hauled ass, dude. I was like, "Yeah, I didn't want to get shot, dude." but my point was with that is, in my belief, God's going to put you where you need to be. Yep. You make certain relationships, and some you make a lot of bad decisions. I do all the time.
Plenty of them.
Yeah, but maybe you're supposed to make those bad decisions to get you where you need to be. I think as long as your heart's in the right place and you're pushing forward, you try your best every day. You're not going to make everybody happy, but you're going to make some people happy, and that's where you need to be.
I've done a real good job of learning things the hard way for a long time.
Yeah, you're not going to meet very many people that said he's one of the smartest decision makers I ever met in my life. They're going to go, "That idiot, dude, he's been in and out of jail, and, he's got all kinds of issues, But I'm not ashamed of it, dude. I learned from all of it, and I try not to do it again,
That's all we can do.
Yeah, like, wait a minute, I've been here before. Don't do this,
Yeah, this feels familiar.
Yeah. But it all comes back to, like, with what you do, what I do too. It's putting your heart into it, man, and just trying your best and trying to improve on yourself. Like, I feel I get stuck sometimes because I messed up for a little while. I believe was chasing there was a certain style that was going around, and I just tried to prove that, hey, I can do that style too. That's not hard to do. And I kind of got away from what I was doing to try to, like, I can do what they do. Look, I can do that too, And it was one of the, like I said, dumbest decisions I believe I made, because I got away. Like, my trajectory was different. I was building things way more 3D, way more intense, way more attention to detail than a lot of people, not everybody, but a lot of people that were out there. And it kind of went to more flat, and multiple little pieces and inserts and that, like they teach at the schools and all that stuff. And it which is good, and it still looked good, and I'm not ashamed of anything I built. But it was, my heart wasn't into it.
In a way, you're kind of watering yourself down.
Yeah, and I'm like, what am I doing, man? I can do better than this. And so now I'm back on that trajectory again. Mm-hmm. So now you're about to see some more crazy 3D stuff coming out that I've been working on, and a lot more newer ideas. And I got a couple of little inventions that I've been trying to work on too, to try to get completed. One of them being that new style shotgun handle. And it's not, I can make it, but it's how to produce it. So, like you said, like a normal person that doesn't have a full shop or, 3 decades of knowledge to do it. Yeah. Because usually they get mad, like when I said about the handles. I don't give directions, Here it is,
Figure it out.
Yeah, but I got videos that explain how it works, So if anybody who contacts me, it's like, most of the time that's where they see it anyway. But if they contact me, I'll just send them a link to the video. Look, here's the basic principle. Because they're universal. I don't know your car. If I've done one, I can tell you how I did it and send you pictures. But if I don't know your car, it's just, you got to have a basic knowledge of mechanics to understand how to do it, And
I actually got to work with one of your kits.
Oh, cool.
Our upholstery guy down the street from us ordered a set for a car that he was doing at the time. Okay. And built them into door panels.
Awesome.
A caprice that he was doing. Yep. Yeah. Yeah. He had a set. And he was talking about, he ordered up these shotgun handles. And of course I'm like, well, you got them from Heath, right? I said, I know him. But it was cool. He even mentioned that too. He's like, man, there's no instructions or nothing. He's like, he's lucky I know how to do all this. He's like, I figured it out. Exactly. But in a way, there's nothing wrong with that though, because you're targeting an audience that you want somebody to be able to take that. That saves them a ton of work, a ton of time, a ton of engineering. There's other people that can make it.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Figure it out the same way you did, just like anything else. And anybody, but that's not why you're making them. You're making them because now you made that. I buy it. It saves me a ton of time, a ton of engineering, a ton of screwing things up to get it to work.
Yeah, now that's the 4th generation now I'm on. I've improved it. The first one I made, dude, I made them with drawer slides.
Okay.
you know, and they were flimsy, you know, but it's just sheet metal. They don't got to move but like an inch,
Yeah.
you know, but there's little door slides, and I had this, you know, brilliant idea. I'm going to do this, and I put it in, and it worked out really great. The only thing I didn't like about it is when you pulled the handle, it had some give in it, you know, and I don't like that too much. And then so I found some X pipe and had this trolley system that had had 3 wheels on it. One had a cam, you know, so you could turn it and tighten it, you know, get the tension, which is great until you pulled on that handle about 20 times, and the cam would loosen up. And then they get a sloppy ass handle, you know what I mean? So then I came up with the trolley I got now, but it was big, it was bulky, you know, and I got that one. It just, and I changed the spring return system too, and now I use urethane O-rings as a spring return. First one had a literal spring on it. You close the door and you clink, 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 you know. And so I was like, man, I got to find a better way, you know. So I did that. And this isn't, you know, it's not rocket science by no means, but it's learning as I went.
It's a lot of trial and error.
Yeah, it's just something that simple. Okay, I mean, being Elon Musk and building rockets, that's insane, you know. but to build, I'm just doing a little handle, and I'm like, you know, how can I make this little thing better, you know? And I think it's pretty much at its final stage. It's not really going to get any better, you know. It works well. You don't have to grease them. You don't, you know, they work good.
Maintenance free, and they last.
Yeah, they last. They last good. You know, as long as they're installed correctly, you're not going to slack out the cable or nothing. It'll work good, you know.
Cool.
But it's nuts. It's things like that, you know, that I think, to me, when I do stuff like that, when I doubt that I have the passion anymore, I'm like, no, I still got it, because I care about little stuff like that. And I'm still wanting to create little things like that. You know what I mean? So it's like, if I didn't have the passion, I wouldn't give a shit. You know? I'd be like, because I doubt myself sometimes. You know, I'm my own worst enemy, dude. I'm a shitty boss. You know, you're a screw up, dude. You don't know what you're doing. What are you? I mean, the imposter syndrome and all that stuff. You know.
Yeah.
Then I look at some of the old stuff I did and go, damn, that looks pretty good. You know, I did pretty good on that one. You know, but I don't know. I don't know if you ever experienced that, but with me, it's difficult.
Yeah, it happens a lot. And then, you know, when you get tied up in the business side of it and answering customers and keeping the invoices up to date, and you know, you put too much focus in the business, you're going to slack on the work side. When you put too much focus in the work side, you're going to slack on the business side. Mm-hmm. So finding the balance there is very difficult. Mm-hmm. Now balance all that group together, and family, and friends, and you know,
it's difficult.
It's very difficult.
You know, and I listen to a lot of these podcasts and that trying to get better with business. You know what I mean? And of course, you get a lot of them that are super alpha male, and you know, like, you know, screw it, you got to go hard. And well, yeah, maybe for a 20-year-old, you don't have, you know, a family, wife and kids, and you know, other family, you know, parents that are getting older that you know you have to worry about. Maybe yes, I can dedicate 18 hours a day, 7 days a week to build my career. But I'm 55 this year, and I don't, you know, I've got a grown daughter, you know, and a wife that I did a lot of that to get the reputation I have now. And so now it's trying to find, I know everybody says the work-life balance stuff, and I don't know, whatever you want to call it, but trying to make time for my family, and still not, I definitely don't want to cut back on any of my business stuff, you know, because building interiors is my passion, dude. Like you said, I used to do everything. I had a shop called Kingpin Customs back in the day, and I did everything. We built chassis, I built interiors, we did, you know, basically like what you do. Did everything. But the majority of my business, I noticed, was audio and interiors.
Okay.
And so, you know, I didn't personally paint the cars. You know, I didn't personally build the chassis. I had people with me. I knew how to do it, and I would manage the jobs, and I would do a little bit of work on them and stuff like that. But being reliant upon, you know, all these other people became very difficult for me to do, because I'm over here. I'm the only one building the interiors with a little help from my guys. And so it became very difficult for me, and I had to have, you know, coming to Jesus moment. It was like, well, I actually had to shut that business down. I got robbed for a bunch of money and all this stuff. But I was like, when I was going to start back up, I had to have that talk with myself. Yeah. It's like, self, listen here, you know, don't think you can do everything.
Yeah.
you know, you need to do what you're best at. And I excel at interiors and audio. You know, that's what I started out at, like I said, with the boat, you know. And so I know that. I know that 100% inside and out. I know how to do it. And so far, it's been decent. Like I said, I'm not, you know, I ain't driving a Lambo, you know, but I don't know if I'd even want one. But, you know, but I'd have a car like yours. I'd have an old school ride or whatever. But it's finally gotten to me, like right now, like I told my wife, I said, you know how I know I'm rich? She's like, how? I was like, because when we go to, you know, Saltgrass Steakhouse, you know, it's highfalutin for us. I said, I don't even worry about what none of that shit costs. I can put a full tank of premium and I ain't stressing. Yep. I was like, you know, so I'm rich, you know, in my opinion, you know, and I think I'm happy with that to a certain extent. Of course, you always want more. You know, you always want to do better. You want a bigger, better house or whatever. But like I said, I've gotten older. And I think with me trying to pass some of this on to my daughter and that, and thinking now, you know, I'm 3/4 of the way through my life, you know, if I make it that way. And so I'm like, do I want to just be busting my ass, you know, 18 hours a day until I die and not experience my life? Or would I rather, you know, for me, working a 50, 60-hour week is great. I'm cool with that. If I can do that many hours and enjoy my life with my family still, I think I'd rather be there, you know, and it make the customers happy that I can make in those hours, you know, and that's where I'm headed anyway. Hope I make it there, but that's where I'm headed.
You'll get there.
Yeah.
It's, for me, I deal with a lot of that too, man. It's the old shop, you know, I started out by myself I wasn't by myself. I was the business by myself. I had two buddies that rented with me. We rented enough room for 3 vehicles.
Yeah.
So it was me and 2 friends, and they each had a toy, and I had a stall to work out of.
Yeah.
And we rented half a shop together. The other half of the shop was the property owner, and that was a big toy box for him, and he built all sorts of
that's cool
rat rods and, you know, all sorts of stuff, and that was a great relationship, and that was a place that really helped us grow. You know, and then a larger unit opened up there, and I had no business going into that.
Yeah.
But it was one of those deals where he said, you know, I've always got a waiting list. People, there's always a list of people I can pick up the phone and call, at least 5 people that are looking for a building, and someone might take it. But he said, I always offer other units to current tenants first, and then, you know, we go from there. So if you want it, go ahead. Otherwise, I'm going to start calling people.
Yeah.
We go in, we walk around, we take a look at it. All right, let's go for that.
Yeah.
So we started growing. You know, we went from a 3-car stall to 5,000 square feet.
Yeah.
And from there, you know, I mean, we did a lot out of that shop. We did a lot of cool stuff. There was a lot of growing, a lot of learning, and, you know, we really took the company to a great place from there. And I had a couple people in and out.
Yeah.
Kyle moved home from college in 2018, I want to say, towards the end of 2018. And came aboard with me, and originally it was just going to be for short time, just to keep him busy, put some money in his pocket. He was trying to figure out what he wanted to do with his life. And cars have always been
he found it
thing for both of us. You know, and still to this day, you know, Kyle just never left, you know, and he just keeps getting better and better and better. And I think it's fairly safe to say he's a permanent fixture here at the company, and he's,
you know, it's like what some people, you know, hear people say all the time, like it's, oh, you do what you love, you never work a day in your life. Well, I don't know if I believe that, because I believe it's still work at some point, especially when you're the business owner. You know what I mean? When you have to worry about, if I could just build interiors and stuff all day and not have to worry about money at all, you know, it'd be awesome. But I wouldn't do anything else. You know what I mean? It's not like, it's not all rainbows. You know, I'm not just skipping into work every day and singing la 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 la. You know, there's some stress involved, but there's some times that I'm very, very happy. You know, when things are going right. You know, and it's coming out like I want. You know, especially the first time, if that ever happens, and I'm like, hell yeah. You know, makes me feel good. I've tried other things. I went to school to be work at a chemical plant, be an operator. There's a lot of my friends that did that, and they were doing very well financially. And so I was like, man, maybe that's what I need to do. And I wasn't there 2 weeks, and I was getting job offers from the plants. Mm-hmm. They said, you can quit school. Just come right now. We'll teach you the rest of everything you need to know in 2 weeks. And my instructor told me that. And I had to really, really, sit back. And, I mean, these dudes at this point, they've been doing it for 5-10 years. They're already millionaires, And I had to really, that's what I'm saying, not making the greatest decisions. I don't want to be a millionaire. I want to work on cars, And so that's what I did, went right back into it like an idiot, but I love it. And it's, when it's fun, it is really fun, and it's definitely worth it. I always joke around, tell people don't do it, but do it, dude. If you love it, you do it, and maybe you can figure out a better way to do it than me, you know what I mean, and learn from my mistakes, and do better, and enjoy it as well, And I think everybody should try it.
Yeah. We're big on working a lot with other shops in the area.
Mm-hmm.
We trade a lot of work back and forth, or bounce ideas back and forth, or they'll call me, I call them, and it's all about picking their brain on things, and working each other out of a corner that we back ourselves into on something, and that helps with the stress side of things for sure. And having the crew that we have, I mean, it's not only am I a pretty big critic of myself,
mm-hmm.
A lot like you. We're all pretty hard on each other around here too. So we'll finish something up, and it's usually everybody puts their headgear on to invite somebody over and take a look at it and give them their honest opinion. And it's there's times where like, come on, dude, you do better than that, And I can usually tell by Kyle's facial expressions if I finish something up and see what he thinks, or I'm not quite done with it yet.
He's hilarious.
He comes over a little too early, and he's like, go over there. Back to
Shane Gillis looking ass. And I have a customer of mine, right, that he's the first car that he's ever been built. He's bought other cars, but he's building this one, right? And great dude, man. He does remodeling and stuff on homes, and does very well for himself. And unfortunately, he had some bad relationships with some of the people he got him because they didn't understand him.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like we've had discussions before. You have different levels of customers, and certain people demand a certain amount of thing. And then he didn't understand the car game really, and he was trying to undercut some of these people. Unfortunately, you know what I mean, and not in a mean way. It's just that's his business. He's a contractor, so when he hires these people, he tries to get the best rate to increase his profit.
Mm-hmm.
I had to explain to him that, look, man, these aren't your subcontractors. They're building a car for you. They're not here to make you a profit. You know what I mean? And I've got him on the right path. And it was funny, like I said, with those relationships is I put him in touch with my mechanic guy, put him in touch with my paint and body sheet metal guy, and he actually called me and he goes, man, I got to tell you something. I said, what? He goes, your friends and your associates that you work with are some super solid people. I said, well, man, I'm not going to send you to anybody that I don't care if they got a great reputation or not. If I haven't done any actual work with them before, I'm not going to send them to you. You may ask and I'll say, this is what I heard or whatever. But if I send you to them personally and say, hey, he said, come over here, I trust them.
You trust putting your name on work that they do working with you.
Trust them that they're gonna, I'm not saying they're the cheapest, but they're gonna charge accordingly, and they're gonna do the best amount of work, the best work they can do for you. The best in their ability. And if something does go wrong, they'll take care of it because this is custom and it's going to go wrong. You're going to have, like we were talking about, most of the higher end builders, they keep the cars for a year or so afterwards. Mm-hmm. So if it's going to mess up, it's going to mess up on them.
Yeah.
And they can get it fixed where the customer gets it back. Yeah. And that's what, these guys, unfortunately, in the real world, if you're not a super elite builder, you can't do that. They're not going to let you have their car for a year to drive it around.
Definitely not.
But so you have to be able to take care of them. When they got a problem, you say, hey, bring it in, or I'll go get it, or whatever you got to do. And that's what these guys are. And this, like you said, is building those relationships. And they know if I'm not going to send them a customer that's flaky or undecisive or, is going to be a pain in their butt. Yeah. And so he sent them, cool, and they're good to work with, So
So they trust the client coming from you as a referral,
and then the client
as much as you trust
the referral. Yep. Yeah, so it works out good, and that's all about building those relationships. Yep. And most of these guys, one of them I've been dealing with for 22 years, something like that. Or no, longer than that. Shoot, dang, back in the 90s. So, yeah, long time.
And for you, I mean, your level of quality, obviously you got your own style, you put your own twist on it. Mm-hmm. Everything that you do, it's a Heath Moore job when it's done. So it took years to build your own style, your own signature. Mm-hmm. Well, what inspired you? What builders? Where did you get a lot of your inspiration from as you were?
One of them's right down the road right now.
Well,
Oh, Troy, Troy Trepanier. And he was one, and that's and really what turned me on to him was the Orion ads. When he had that, which one was it? The peach one? The
that's
51?
Actually back over there right now.
Really?
Yep.
Yeah, that thing was amazing, dude. When I saw it, and that was totally my style. Most of the stuff just clean, try to hide everything. That's the reason I came up with the handles. I can't stand switches and stuff on the doors and all that crap. I don't like it. And so that style, he was a big one. And of course Boyd back in the day. Yeah, remember I'm old. It was all these old guys that, and then like the stuff that like what Bob Thrashwood when he was with him was doing, just clean his paintwork. All this paintwork was really cool all the time. And then of course it's Chip Foose and that, and then later even evolving into with like Dave Kindig, his type of style, which I love to death, And he's funny. I feel honored every time he sees me. He goes, "Man, I still got a job opening for you. You want to come work?" It's like I got to live around a bunch of Mormons, dude. I don't know. but yeah, those guys, that style, that hot rod style. Even though I'm a mini trucker at heart, I've always been a mini trucker, and I like a lot of the crazy tribal graphics and all that stuff. But it's always been about cleanliness to me. Yeah. Just as stripped down, because then you can really pay attention. I tell people it's harder to make something stripped down without too much going on than it is to make something real busy. You can hide a lot of flaws when you've got a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah, oh, for sure.
Too much for your eye to look at. You're gonna be like, you got all this diamond stitch, and you got this, and you got this, and you got lights, and you got this. And you're gonna miss a lot of stuff. Yep. If it's just simple and clean, they're gonna see where you screwed up, man.
I mean, and they are a prime example right down the road of that. I mean, that 36 they just did.
Oh, that thing is amazing.
Talk about less is more.
Yeah, when you guys let me see it last year before it was even finished.
Oh yeah,
You introduced me to him, and that, like I said, I met him at SEMA, but never really.
You've known him a little longer.
Yeah, well, I've never really got to sit and talk with him like that, And I felt honored. I mean, I almost cried like a little schoolgirl whenever he knew who I was. I'm like, I'm Heath. He goes, I know who you are. And he's like, I was like, oh, man. What?
Give me a second.
Yeah. But then, he gave me the tour and everything was awesome, dude. And I really appreciate you guys doing that. I mean, he actually gave me some very good business advice as well. He said, I was telling you before, he said the best business advice is have a rich wife. So, so you don't have to worry about the money, But, he helped me out with some serious business stuff too, which has kind of put me on the path where I need to be now. So it's really honored coming from a legend like that. Yeah.
I mean, he's a huge inspiration, ever since I was a kid. And, a lot of the same guys, Boyd, Jesse James.
Oh yeah, Jesse too, yeah.
I mean, that's a guy, you want to talk about somebody that makes a whole lot of poor decisions.
Yeah.
He's pretty good at that.
But still a craftsman,
that guy
man.
will take a piece of metal and turn it into absolutely anything he wants it to be.
Yeah. I consider myself the poor man's Jesse James interior guy because I make a lot of bad decisions too, man. But, I can build you a set of killer door panels,
There you go. Yeah, it's kind of come from everywhere, man. And family members, all over the place. I mean, my dad is the biggest inspiration.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Do, and he teaches all of this now.
That's cool, man.
And continues to teach it. And he's at his third school that he's teaching at now over the course of his teaching career. This time it's high school students.
That's awesome.
He's got 8 high schools that feed the vocational program that he runs. It was a dying program.
Yeah.
The body shop was packed packed with stuff. They were using it as a storage building.
That's insane. Yeah.
And he's getting it turned around, cleaned back up, and it's cool because he really connects it with the kids. He's not just teaching them how to straighten a fender and pull a frame rail or anything like that. He teaches them some of the creative side of things, custom paint, custom fabrication. He's building his own hot rod that he's been doing for years, and it's a car that he's scratch building for himself.
That's amazing.
And that's over there, and he's starting to show the students some of that, and they're taking interest in a lot of that. And it's cool now that he's working with such an impressionable age group that, they don't know what they want to do with their lives.
Yeah.
So they're taking these vocational programs to try all sorts of different things and see. And they're not even in college yet or not out of high school to get out into the workforce or anything. So it's good because now he's in a position where he can, I'm hoping, he can start giving me some tips of like, hey, this kid just graduated and he's
exactly.
good. He's got potential.
You got an inside recruiter. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They're all the way out in South Carolina.
Yeah.
But hey,
if they're willing to relocate.
Absolutely.
And I was talking to your brother about this, Kyle, about it. It's like, I've been wanting to, kind of looking, not seriously looking, but looking around at some of these high schools, to see if they don't have anything like what I do, but to see if, maybe it's within woodworking or within body work and stuff too, anything kind of mix the car related stuff to be able to go and kind of teach kind of how I do things and maybe inspire, bring a cool car up there for them to see. But dude, there's really no vocation. You think in Texas, they would have them all over the place.
Yeah, especially in the Houston area.
Yeah, dude, I can't. On my side, I'm on the northeast side, and there's in the schools right directly where I'm at. There's nothing. There's no vocational programs, and then a little further north of me, like New Caney area and stuff, I believe they do. I know they got welding programs and stuff, but I don't know if they have anything. I think that's what a lot of these kids are needing nowadays, dude.
Yeah.
Is to build stuff, to create things. Just like I was saying about how I've done this. I've hit my goal for the day. Look what I created.
Yeah.
And be able to touch it with your hands, dude, and be like, look, I made this.
Build it from nothing.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. I think this flat piece of steel or a flat piece, I use a lot of plastics and stuff, so flat piece of plastic. And I made this thing that's all 3D shaped and that. And I use a little bit of technology, I got a little laser and a little CNC, and I use a little bit of that.
Yeah.
But most of the stuff I do, I need to really, I guess, do videos and stuff of it. I'm a grinder, dude. I'll stack up a bunch of plastic and that, and I'll hand draw my lines on it, and I'll grind it down. Just sit there and hand grind it till I get the shape I want, and then I got to replicate it most of the time on the other side. I'm like, I should have made a template, damn it, But to me, that's what we have conversations now about the AI, and all the machines, lasers and scanners and all that stuff that's taken over everything. I'm hoping that eventually, when that robotic made stuff is cheaper and easier to get, that people who do work with their hands will be niche. If you can hang on through that little revolution that's coming, then you will be niche and be more desirable to people who do have the funds and that to be able to do it, so you can keep our craft going. Because otherwise it's going to die out, dude. And there's going to be a lot of people that are going to leave, because, even like what you do with spraying cars, dude, there's going to be a point where you'll be able to buy a robotic, paint booth, and it'll read the car, and it can 360, you don't got to get a ladder to get on a roof or nothing, you know what I mean? And it'll spray a car, but there's going to have to be something that separates you, that people are going to want to not have to, not want that robotic sprayed car. Yeah. That they're going to want the heart and the love and everything that went into you spraying the car. And right now, I know most of it's in the prep, but eventually they're going to have prep robots,
Yeah. And there are some.
Yeah.
The FabTech Expo is pretty cool to go check out. A lot of new robotic things. It's a bunch of stuff that I know I never be able to afford.
Yeah.
But you walk in over there and they've got a robotic arm with a DA on it, and it's prepping a hood.
Crazy.
The whole thing. SEMA, I think they had a few of those going on the last time we were out there for that. But I look at that and I'm like, it might work in the collision world for now.
Mm-hmm.
It's got its place. I'm just hoping that, maybe what I'm doing now it'll take a little longer for it to reach where we're at.
And it will. I mean, I've used AI to see what AI is going to do to my job.
Yeah.
I've looked it up and I was like, what's it doing to the custom upholstery and fabrication and And it says, regular upholstery and that will be taken over within the next 5 years. That's what Grok says, but sometimes Grok's an asshole, so I don't know. But he said that within the next 5 years it'll be taken over. But he said also, he or she, I don't know the sex of the robot, but he said that it's going to, with niche classic cars and custom cars, it doesn't, in the foreseeable future, see robots taking that over. It will take over, it's taking over basically, production stuff, that'll be done. And I'm sure some of the bigger interior shops and that will be able to afford robots and that stuff like CAT scans and all that, will take over. But as far as custom one-off stuff, it doesn't foresee it anytime soon, which kind of made me feel a little bit better.
It's comforting.
Yeah, he's not lying, but yeah. He likes to tell jokes.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, the handcrafted aspect of, the whole appeal of all of that, what we do and what so many other shops across this country do.
Mm-hmm.
That's something that, we're trying to do the same thing to try to help keep it alive. I've been back to my old high school twice.
That's cool, man.
To get to do, just quick presentations. Me and Kyle went and we took Tess's dually.
Badass.
We got to show that to the auto shop, and a few of the kids had some interest in it. The truck's definitely cool looking.
Yeah.
But then I got invited back out for a career day, and it was one of those things. I mean, I hate walking into a room full of people.
Yeah.
So, we get there and they put all of us in one of the extra gyms in the school, and it's all the other, career speakers. And from there, they take you off to all the classrooms and all the kids that signed up for certain programs. You'd end up with a small group of, kids that were interested in whatever it is that you're talking about.
Exactly, yeah.
But, you come walking in there and you see all the people. You've got doctors and nurses and, police officers, firemen, and then you've got a bunch of business guys, suits and ties and all that type of stuff. And, I walk in there and I'm wearing work pants, work boots. I got my uniform shirt on.
Yeah.
It was interesting, though, because everybody's kind of talking a little bit. I just stand off out of the side, talk to some of the staff that still remembered me from when I was there, and you get a couple people, a lot of the suit and tie type people. They come over and they're like, "Hey, how's it going? I'm so and so, and what do you do?" You get to asking them questions, and a couple of them were like, "Oh, well, I do, I do this with tech and blah 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 blah." But you a mechanic or what? Well, yeah, we kind of. You get to telling them what you do and. Like, no way! Oh man, that's so cool! I'd love to get into doing something like that. So it's cool that even if they don't know anything about it, you're not going to go into detail and explain what we do because we're just mechanics to everybody. It's a term.
It becomes difficult sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah. But people do have an interest in it, no matter what, which is cool. It's intriguing. It's an interesting field. When we do bring people through here and they see the shop and see. We've always got a lot going on here. And, but when they do see the extent of what we do here, they still don't quite get it, but at least they start to kind of understand, like, okay, so you're not going to do brakes on my Corolla for me. No.
I can recommend somebody.
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
not what I do.
There's plenty of great places right up the street, right in town. There's a ton of them. Go see Troy.
Yeah. He'll love that. Yeah,
absolutely. Tell him Heath sent you.
Yeah.
But it's we all just kind of get grouped into that. We're just greasy mechanics.
Yeah, even my family, they're like, yeah. Oh, so you do upholstery? Yeah, kind of. They're like, oh, I need my seats done or my headliner. Or something like that. And I was like, I don't think you want to pay me to do that.
Yeah.
There's people who are way more cost effective for that. I have to explain to them. I said, I'm more of a fabricator. I'm not the guy that, that's going to wrap your headliner and stuff like that. I'll do it for like customers already got stuff, but I don't want a bunch of headliners lining up. But when I explained to them that, like, I'll build a complete interior from nothing, I'll show you some flat pieces of ABS and PVC and birch and some cans of fiberglass and filler, and that's what I build, man. It's a bunch of glue and all that stuff, and they're like, oh, okay. And then I show them a picture. Look, I built that. They said, what'd you make that out of? I made it out of flat sheets of, No, but what did you get? Did you use a mold from somebody? And I'm like, no, I made it. I'm telling you, I made it. And they're like, they don't believe me, And I'm like, I guess I look that stupid that there's no way I could possibly make that happen,
They just, it's hard to comprehend that, you took this pile of raw materials.
Yeah.
That they would never guess were going to go together.
Yeah.
Cut it, shaped it, formed it,
yeah.
Melted it.
Yeah, exactly.
Stitched it.
Yeah. There you go.
Boom, this is what we got.
Yeah.
Light it up a little bit.
Yeah. And it just
look easy, right? That's it.
It just blows their mind. And then it's weird, though, after that, they tend to have a different type of respect for you, especially if they've seen it in person. And it, not that, I need to get respect from anybody, but it's just, they treat you differently. Yeah. And it's weird. They're like, oh, I always thought that guy was a loser, but he builds some pretty cool stuff. Yeah. It's like I used to tell, like, John on the TV show, I had to make a decision when we were going to do it. I was like, basically, do I want to try and be somebody that I'm not on this show, to try to act more professional and use bigger words and use substrate and not show the fancy tools, or do I want to be me, And like I said, I'm pretty much a goofball, and so that. So it's like John would kind of get on to me, He's like, Heath, you're looking goofy, dude. And I was like, well, I am goofy, and he's like, but people are going to think a certain way about you. He goes, do you want to be that character, And I thought about that a little bit. And he's like, because there's certain people on these shows that are just goofball characters, and they don't really, they help them with the cars, but they don't stand out as far as any craftsmen or anything like that. And I was like, yeah, you know what I'm going to be, John? He's like, what else? I'm going to be that goofy dude that they're going to go, look what that dumb bastard just built, and that's life. That's real. That's what it is. I like to have fun. I like to goof around. I'm always cracking jokes. Even though I work by myself, I crack myself up sometimes. But I still like to focus on my craft and let the work speak for itself. I'm not going to try to impress you. I didn't go to school. I learned it all, by myself, as they would say, hard knocks or whatever. Yeah. But I made a lot of mistakes, and I figured it out, and I've got the way I do it, that works for me. And I like 99.9% of the results that I give, never 100% happy, but I like most of it, that's going out there. And I think that speaks for itself. I'm not trying to pay my light bills with my personality, That TV show didn't pay me physically any money, It just helped me with my brand and pushing, what I needed to push,
So speaking of the TV show,
mm-hmm.
So how did all that come about for you?
Man, I've known Tim for a long, long time. I've known Tim since before he had his driver's license. I actually got a ticket driving a truck that he owned in Galveston, Texas. He had bought a truck from a friend of mine that was a convertible S10, and this is 90s, right? So this thing was lowered ground effects, and it was blue and pink. And it had like the little drip style paint job on it, totally 90s. But it had no roof. It was convertible. And so we're driving down the seawall, and you had to have a seatbelt. Well, there's no place to put the shoulder part of the belt. And so we didn't have any seatbelts. And so we're rolling. We got pulled over, and I got a ticket. And then so he offered to pay it. And I'm like, no, I'm an idiot. Was driving the truck. I'll pay for it, whatever. And then we just kind of always hung out with the same people. We've been friends and hung out, all this stuff. Well, he approached me at Autorama one year, and he's like, hey, I heard rumors that they were talking about doing a show with him. And he goes, man, me and Bill were talking, and he goes, I think, we want to bring you in as like one of the interior guys. And he goes, what do you think? And I was like, man, I don't know. And at this point, I already had like a year waiting list, you know. And I was starting to come up at that point. You know, I've been up and down, and I was on the upside. And so evidently that's why they came to me. You know what I mean? So, and so he's like, well, think about it. He goes, and don't tell anything to Bill yet, because he said not to really talk to you about it yet. He goes, I just want to give you a heads up. He's going to be contacting you. I was like, okay. And so I was like, man, I'm talking to my wife. And I was like, Becca, you know what? I was going to piss off my customers too if I'm got too much time. I said, and she was like, well, you know, just go with your heart. You know, think about what you need to do and if it'll help you. And I was like, okay. And so about 2-3 days later, Bill called me. And I was like, man, can I come and talk to you about it or whatever? I said, I'm about 90% there. I said, can we talk? And he's like, yeah. And so went down, we talked, and basically it sounded really cool, you know. And I was still like, can you give me like a week or so? And I don't know why, you know, most people would just jump on it. But like I said, I felt like I was already coming up, and I had to really consider, like, do I want to do this? And the person who actually convinced me was Lonnie Ford. He runs LST, big car show in Texas. I know you probably heard about it. Well, we were at another show, and I had a Kodiak that I did with Bill. They did the Cadillac front end on it. It was like tan and brown and stuff, and I had that show in there. And he comes up and he goes, man, I heard they're going to put you on a TV show, man. That's awesome. Congratulations. And I said, man, I don't know yet, dude. And he goes, man, you really are stupid. Who's saying this all the time, you know? And he's like, but he goes, man, if you pass up this opportunity, it might be the biggest mistake that you've ever made. And I said, you're right. I am pretty stupid. I was like, but I think I'm going to go ahead and do it. You know, that convinced me right there. You know, it wasn't so much of, you know, talking to Bill and Tim, who I respect and love, you know, both of them, but it was Lonnie, you know. So it took a lot of thinking to make it happen. And then I did it, and some of it was rough, but man, I wouldn't have changed a thing. You know what I mean? It helped me. It broadened my customer base so big. You know, I get messages. I've sent parts to Canada, and, you know, I get calls from Brazil, you know, and people wanting to get stuff done, and messages just telling me they think it's cool and they learned something from watching one of my videos or on the show, or it's really made a difference, you know. And it's like I said, I've got cars from New Jersey, I've got cars from Missouri, you know, I've got cars from Tennessee, you know, they're from all over, and that wouldn't have happened, you know, if it wasn't for, you know, Bill and Tim and, you know, all the guys at Velocity at the time that let that happen for me, you know. So it was a ride, and it was something I'm very fortunate to be part of, you know. Now everybody knows me as the taco guy and the and the tall sock guy, and you know, the 300-pound Heath press guy, you know, which is, it's fun, dude, and I love it, man. You know, a lot of people like you guys are always like, hey man, don't everybody mess with him, or don't mess with him. You know, I don't mind it at all. You know, I like when people want to come up and take pictures. It builds my ego, man. It makes me feel good. You know what I mean? I'm in Home Depot and people are like, man, are you that guy? And I'm like, who are you talking about? You know? Me, Fred Durst? Yeah, that's me, dude. rolling, you know? But yeah, it's been an adventure, man. It's been fun. And like I said, I would recommend anybody do it. You know, maybe not the exact same way I did it, but, you know, I'd recommend anybody, you get the opportunity, man, don't turn it down. I know you've had some opportunities that you've been talking about, and that's, dude, I think it's something you should do. More people need to, you know, realize the awesomeness of Nick, you know.
We have a lot of fun around here, that's for sure.
Yeah.
We say all the time, if people followed us around with cameras all day long,
yeah.
Well, you make some more friends, that's for sure. I don't know. We keep people entertained.
Well, I have people all the time that tell me, like, hey, man, how come you don't do more videos, dude? You know, we love seeing your videos. And I've tried it both ways just to see. But I'm like, it takes time.
Yeah.
And not just the filming. I can put cameras on me and let them roll all day long, but then you got to edit all this shit, dude. Yeah. And I do all my own editing. And so you have to have the funds to be able to hire like at least a 2-person crew to be able to do sound and follow you. And then even then, they're not going to catch everything.
No.
But it's definitely fun. It's definitely something I want to get back into a little bit more. Later on, at least with not on some YouTube stuff. I love showing people how to do the stuff I do with basic tools.
Yeah.
Now, it does take some skill level, but that's something you can build up. You know what I mean? But to show them how to make anything. Like I did an article in, was it Trucking Magazine back in 2004 or 5, something like that, where it was, I showed them how to make, like, if people wanted, like, you can't afford like a Bob Grant tailgate skin or something, right? You want to shave the back of your truck. Mm-hmm. Well, I did an article where I think Harley was the guy at the time there, but I said, just take your tailgate, man, and we taped it up, put mold release on it, and made a fiberglass pop off of it, and you welded a piece of, 1x1 sheet metal tubing up top and on the bottom, and you hooked it to it and molded in. Yeah. It's all fiberglass, it's not metal, but it looks exactly like your tailgate. If you want to get real critical with it, then you use that and do it for your negative, and then you just lay it on the inside. But for the guy around the house, that's close enough.
Yeah.
And it'll work, and it did pretty well. And so I love showing people how to do that. Like, most people don't know, most of the stuff I build, I use a jigsaw, dude. Now for all my cuts, I use a jigsaw. I use a router if I need a super straight, long cut or something like that. But then it's block sanded it,
Shape it slowly to what you want it.
Yeah, like if I cut out the insert on a door, I'll cut it out, and then I'm pretty good with a fucking jigsaw, but it'll have a little bit of wave, and you look down it like you're looking at Home Depot, looking at a 2x4 that's crooked. I'm looking at it, and I'll just take the block and block it. And 2 things happen at that point. One, it gets it straight. But then when I do the other piece that I cut out, getting it straight, it gives me a gap for material. You know what I mean? And so, and if I need to clear out a little more, I'll put like a step-down bearing on a router and clear it out a little more, or build it up, whatever I got to do. But I get it like a super tight press fit, and I don't use a router for it. I don't use a router for it, or I don't use my CNC to do that stuff. Mm-hmm. I just think because in real time, I can change it. You know what I mean? Like if I draw it out freehand, I'll just take and just go, draw it out, cut it out. And if I don't like it, toss it in the trash. And that took me a total of 10 minutes. Yeah. If I'm designing it on the laptop, which I know how to do, it may take me 10 minutes or more to design it on a laptop. But then I got to run it. And so that may take another 20 minutes or whatever to get it ran. Yeah. And then if I don't like it, I'm still throwing it in the trash. Then I got to get back on the laptop. Yeah. When I could already just done it by hand, and been done,
It's fun to get to do some of the stuff from scratch like that, and it's good to know that you're still doing most of your cuts with a jigsaw, because that Monte Carlo out there in the shop, I'm doing the trunk in that car right now, and it's not something I do all the time. And I started out doing that type of car audio stuff like just out of high school and with a couple of shops and things like that.
It's fun, dude. Yeah.
And I love it. Yeah. But the car audio stuff doesn't really happen all that often. But this was kind of an intriguing job, and it was something I wanted to take on. And the car already had a lot of really cool work done to it. And another local shop that we're friends with, and we work back and forth a lot. He didn't have the hands to wrap all the interior panels and everything, and I'm pretty good at that. So they had a guy that was doing all the fabrication on the interior parts and everything, and so he just sent me all the stuff to wrap it, and I wrapped everything, and then it just kind of got to the point where they went as far as they could with the car and put me in touch with the client.
Oh, and cool.
He brought it over here, and we got to talking about finishing the trunk of the car out, and there's some big Rockford Fosgates in there, they're like 93 pounds a piece, awesome. And they need a lot of room to breathe. So the box is pretty crazy. We build them to spec, and it's ported, and a big thing that we like to do with our boxes when we do trunk builds is I bedline all the boxes.
Okay.
Every time one of them's done.
Because
there's so many times that I've
trunk leaks.
Torn into a car, and either trunk leaking or you tear into a car down the road after it's been built for a while, and what do you see? Just a bunch of bare stuff underneath there, all these beauty panels and everything. And you pull everything out, and everything underneath it's just kind of like, what's going on under here? So my thought on it was, and it's something that we started doing around here, is we go the extra mile with that sub box. We prep. I mean, you don't have to prep it perfect because it's got a lot of texture and forgiving, characteristics of the truck bed liner. But
Luna, get up there, Luna. What are y'all doing?
But we line those boxes now, and so you put that in the trunk, and I mean, even that alone, it's like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
You could almost send it down the road like that. But now we get to do all the beauty panels, and
cool.
all of that. I just laid out a couple of paper templates.
Yeah.
Kind of got an idea where we wanted to be with some of that, and I just started drawing, cutting, got all my windows for everything. We got some panels that are going to light up in there and everything, and it'll be pretty cool. But I'm doing it all with a jigsaw, sanding things a little closer into shape where I want them to be, and the same type of thing. I can take enough material off, and I know I got room for wrapping.
Gap material, that'll screw you, dude.
Yeah. And it fits perfect, and then you wrap it, and
it don't go.
More.
Yeah. You wouldn't think about it, but it does.
Yep.
If you like, there's all kinds of other tricks to make that happen too. But to me, I try to build most of my stuff where it press fits. A lot of people use magnets and all that stuff. I've had good and bad luck with magnets. You got to use way more than you think. Because especially on a door, maybe like a recorder, it's not a big of a deal or whatever. But I build my stuff a lot of times so tight on the gaps, like my headliner inserts, they just press fit, and it's upside down, hanging from the roof, and it don't go nowhere.
Railroad tracks and all.
Yeah, it don't go nowhere. It's got to be light. It's got to be thin, and it's got to be able to flex. So usually I use like a 1/8 inch ABS or some like 16 gauge or 18 gauge aluminum. And it flex a little bit so you can bend it and pop it into place. And this just to cover up the screws or whatever. Pop in its insert, and it works great. And that's just learning, and trying to hide the screws and all that stuff, man. But like I said, I believe, a lot of people are just going back to like the TV type thing. They probably think I got this big shop and all these awesome tools, and I'm sitting there and got lasers and satellite linking up and all this shit happening. No, man, I bust out a sheet of wood and a jigsaw, and and once I get it perfect and I got to replicate it, that's when my router comes in. If I got to step it down for gap or whatever, that comes in. Do a little bit of beveling, but even then, most of the time, if I'm beveling something, you look at some of my stuff and like it may be a 1/2 inch just regular bevel on this side, but it's 2.5 inches over here, because I'll hit a 1/2 inch all the way around, and then I'll take a grinder and grind it and extend it so it's got that cooler look that you can't get with just a router.
No.
And you can tell when somebody builds with a router a lot. Everything's just chamfered 45, and they're more square because they use the block method or whatever, and to make all their squares, and it's just, I can tell it's from a fabricator side, which I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. I mean, it works for a lot of people, and financially it's probably better. Maybe they're probably doing way better than me financially, but I can tell that it's more, it's a manual machine made. It still doesn't got that hand touch to it. It takes a different skill to sit there and, like I said, hand grind stuff. I'll stack up, 2 inches thick of PVC, which is very easy to grind. I used to do it with MDF, and that's a pain in the ass. But like PVC, you take that and you can grind it, and you've got to have the mentality. I do it all the time, to where if I don't like it, I'm gonna throw it away. You know what I mean? I'm not gonna, and it hurt me a lot because I'm like, I've got 12 hours in this dash and it looks like shit, dude. Just start ripping it apart, man, throwing it in the trash, so I can't even salvage it. I'll make sure I'm not saving any of this.
Completely start from scratch.
Start over again.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And And I'm usually, not always, but I'm usually way happier with the second one, you know. And it's, maybe I was cutting corners, or maybe I just wasn't in my right headspace, you know, stressed with work or whatever, and kind of just, I need to get it done, and wasn't paying attention to the way my lines flowed or whatever, and it's just not going to work, so it's got to go, you know. And maybe, you know, I think sometimes that's what separates me, because I don't know many people that would just, you know, if you and Kyle or whatever working on a sheet metal panel and you've got 12, 20 hours in it, just to say screw it and throw it in the trash, it's a hard decision.
It is.
It's a hard decision, dude. You're like, maybe I can just tweak it here, or I can, and usually it'll take you way longer, and you're still gonna throw it away anyway.
Yeah.
So you know when it's going right, you know. It's in your gut, and you go, okay, this is looking good. This is right.
I try to look early on.
Yeah.
If we're, you know, we get going on something, building something, shaping a piece of metal, anything we're doing, and early on, if I got a bad feeling about it, I'm like, no, we're just going to throw this away now, so I don't get too invested. Let me start over.
Exactly. Yeah.
Fortunately enough, it doesn't happen too often.
Mm-hmm.
But it
happens.
It does. It happens. I mean, obviously, the goal is to try not to do that.
Exactly.
But
yeah, I think that's the side that a lot of people, like I said, they don't see that.
No.
Like, you're not posting that on your YouTube, you know, or your Facebook or whatever. You're not going to go, hey, look, we really screwed this up, so we're going to start over, you know. But it's part of the process. Yeah. I think maybe I should show that to people, and maybe be like, hey, you know, nobody gets it right the first time. You know, you don't always get it right the first time. And so even if you think that you have it, doesn't mean you do.
No. Yeah.
You know, so you have to go, okay, it's going to cost me money, materials. It's going to cost me money and time, but it's got to go.
Yeah.
You know?
It needs to be right.
Yeah, it's got to be. Like you said, it's your name on it, man. And you want it to be happy. I like to build stuff in my field. Like you do paint, and you know, and you do some mild interior and stuff like that too. And I like to take a truck or car, and that is a nice vehicle. Say it's like a second or third place winning vehicle at most of the bigger shows. Mm-hmm. I try to challenge myself with that and be like, well, I want to put a nice interior in it and turn it into a best of show.
Yeah.
You know, because that's where they're lacking a lot. I believe, you know, they'll have $30,000 motor and all this stuff, and $10,000 wheels, and then they got, you know, a year one interior in it. You know what I mean? And I'm like, it's a resto-mod, bro. I mean, it's not a restoration, you know. Yeah. It's custom. So let's make it custom. And then be able to take that. And now they'll call me and say, man, I'm getting trophies now, dude. You know, and I'm like, well, it's not to say that what I did was so great. It is to say that now is something that's at least close to the caliber of the rest of the vehicle. You know? Because in the same respect, I don't want to outshine the rest of the vehicle either, but I want it to be at least the same caliber. And once people can see that type of interior in a vehicle, it almost kind of sets a standard to where now people are like, oh man, that guy's going to beat me because he's got a custom interior and I don't, you know. And so, well, you need to step up your game.
Yeah.
You know, so now you have to go, they got to find somebody to do that interior. You know, which is kind of self-preservation, I guess, for me. They got
that's
keep
a
going.
big thing that really pushes, I think the whole industry, you know, whether it's body and paint or fabrication or interior, or, you know, any of the chassis guys, anything like that.
Yeah.
Because, you know, you see what someone else is doing, you get out to the shows,
and
you look at something, and not that you're going to try to copy their ideas, but you're going to look at something and you're going to say, wow, they really took this particular area a little bit further. And you're like, man, that's kind of, you know, somewhere that we're lacking a little bit.
Yeah.
So, you know, we're really going to make a push to bring that portion of it up. You know, you bring a car out and the paint's beautiful.
Yeah.
But maybe you didn't pick the right wheel and tire package.
Exactly.
Or, you know, the interior was just not quite up to par. Or, you know, engine bay. Engine bay is a big thing for a lot of people.
Yep.
You know, you open the hood and you're like, it's just not quite, you know. And so you work on improving on that. And the only way to do that is, you know, it takes a little comparison. You know, you want to look at what other people are doing.
It's inspiration.
And, and you take some inspiration from little bits of everything. You know, for us, I mean, we try not to bother those guys very often, but I mean, again, right down the street, you know, I mean, I've had a lot of really good talks with Troy and, you know, Casey and Adam, and, you know, you get to walk in there, and fortunately enough, as long as we stay out of the way, you can come
he's super cool, man.
Be a fly on the wall every now and then, and
well, even the greats, like I said, with Kendick, right? I did a set of my handles for Revo Reeves from Stitchcraft out in California. He did like all the Fast and Furious movies and all that stuff, right? Well, I gave him a set. I gave a bunch of sets to a lot of the people in the industry that I respect, and Dave walked by, and Revo had a set of his exterior handles on the C10 there. He's like, yeah, and he goes, yeah, look at these, and showed Dave shotgun handles. And he goes, you did those? He's like, yeah. He goes, man, you ought to send me a set. He goes, just for inspiration or whatever. He's like, I said, man, this some bitch wants to steal my design. I said, you know what? I'll bite. I sent him a set, got him in the mail and sent him to him. And I was like, and my wife's like, well, what if he steals it? What if he steals it? I said, man, I don't care. I have people all the time put a patent on it. And I'm like, dude, they can change it a little bit and it's theirs. Yeah. Like even Elon doesn't patent stuff. You know what I mean? If you're going to take it, take it. And people that know that I was one originated and I was one that originated it. And I would be honored, actually, if he would think I did something that was that cool to be able to put in one of his rides. Yeah. Yeah. I'd be like, cool. If you take my idea and make it better, cool. I don't care. I would know. And that's all I would need. If I see one and he's got a set of shotgun handles on it, I'm like, yes, sir.
Yeah, it's a compliment.
Yeah, man, I'd be honored, dude. I'd even call him up and be like, I appreciate that, man. I ain't got nothing to hide, man. Go, So it's cool.
So a lot of we've had a couple of talks about, some of the projects that you got to do with the show and things like that. And some of the celebrity vehicles that you guys did. And you had mentioned that previously to even doing the TV stuff, some of those clients were already clients of yours for a lot of that work. I know you mentioned Slim Thug, big car guy in the Houston area.
Yeah.
He's got quite a collection.
Yeah,
and definitely he's almost got his own style.
Yeah,
in itself, it's one of his cars. When you see it. But how did some of that come about? And I mean, what type of projects did you get to do with it?
Was Slim? I didn't actually get to work on his car. I did a lot. I did ESG. We did Fat Pat. I did little Troy. We did a lot of that stuff back in the day when I was just mostly audio, and we knew of each other, and he knew of me, and I did Ricky Holly's stuff for him. I did all Ricky Holly's, and him and Ricky Holly were friends. And he'd always talk to Ricky about, hey, man, I need to get Heath to do some stuff for me, whatever. So it was a perfect opportunity when on the show. And I've done a few things for him besides the car. I had to actually rebuild that car, like the Cadillac, right? I don't know if you even know what happened to that car during our big freeze. He had it in his garage, and that's a permanent, convertible, it's a roadster. Yeah. And he had it in his garage, and the pipes busted right over the top of the car. And flooded the whole car out. Well, then we built that car. It was before I really started using plastics. And it was all built out of MDF. Oh, it was destroyed, dude. And so he came to me, but I had to make it exactly the same, and so I had to rebuild it exactly the same. And I tried to talk him into all plastic. He wasn't going for it. He didn't like that price tag. But we did it. And then I did his truck for him, too. And I worked on a couple of other cars, fixing issues and stuff like that. And it's really cool, man. And I did a lot of football players back in the day. I mean, I'll tell you a funny story about one of the basketball players. You ever, Sam Cassell from the Rockets? Okay. I don't know, you know him. It was Robert Ory and Sam Cassell were customers of ours, and I happened to I was walking back from the Wendy's across the street when we got some lunch. And you ever meet somebody or see somebody and you think you know them, and so you just say something kind of smart ass to them? I'd never met Sam, dude, right? And I'm walking up, if you ever met Sam, he's not. I don't want to be rude, but he's not super attractive like a Robert Horry. Robert Horry's kind of like a Will Smith, good looking, smooth guy. Sam isn't. What we call normally what people would consider attractive. Not saying he's ugly, he's better looking than me. But as a joke, I come in and he's sitting there, and I said, "What's up, ugly mofo?" And walked back of my life. He looked at me all weird, And I was like, "Wait a minute, maybe I don't know this guy," And I went and I sat down in like our little waiting area, whatever, eat my lunch, and then my buddy Lee comes running out with a basketball. And he goes, "Hey, man, Sam Cassell's here?" I said, "Oh, shit, dude." He goes, "What?" I said, "Tell him I'm sorry for calling him ugly." I thought it was one of our regular customers or whatever I was just messing with, And I was like, "Oh, crap, dude, I'm never going to live that down." But I eventually did his car for him. I did some of his car for him. I was like, that was cool. He wasn't too mad, I guess.
We've done a little bit of the professional athlete stuff from time to time. Earlier on, I got to do some work. I think I showed you. We did an interior. We did a console.
Okay, yeah.
C10.
Yeah.
For one of the White Sox pitchers at the
awesome,
time.
Awesome, dude. Yeah.
That was pretty cool. And that truck ended up going to. He used to take it everywhere. It would go to training with him. Off-season training, and it would travel everywhere he was at.
That's super cool. Yeah.
He's got a house in Puerto Rico for his off-season as well, so the truck would go to Puerto Rico. And,
That's cool.
Cool to say that I got to do something that, somewhat across a pond of, whatever.
Yeah,
I get somewhere. A couple of professional basketball players,
Yeah.
like that. We got a car in here right now. It's for a retired NBA player.
That's cool.
So that'll be going with us for the show, and that's a fun one. That was.
Yeah, I think cool. that's one. I think Kyle was showing me the blue one, right?
Yep.
Yeah, that's cool, man.
Yeah, that was a good time, and he's a great client, man. Great friend. I've built a phenomenal friendship with him, and we talk every week.
Yeah,
he just sometimes he'll just call to check up and see what we got going on and how things are going, and how's the wife, how's the baby, and we've been out to his house for dinner. And,
that's super cool, dude.
He's out in Indianapolis, so it's 2.5 hours from us.
Yeah.
But just great guy, so some of it's cool to get to meet.
Yeah. It's so many relationships, man. Some of my best friends were my customers.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because when you work as much as like me and you and stuff, that's all you hang around with.
Yeah.
You got your brother, you got Christian, and your customers.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so it's just me, and I'm only communicating with my customers. One of my best friends, you met him, Danny. He's super rich. He's a lineman, and he
got that lineman money.
Yeah, got that lineman money, right, Kyle? But he became like my best friend. You know what I mean? And I met him when I was doing stereos at Car Toys. I did a couple of systems for him, and we just started hanging out all the time.
Yeah.
I got another friend of mine, Blake, that I did 415s and S10 for him, and that was 96, 97, still buddies. You know what I mean? It's crazy how that happens where, because I guess they're spending money with you, they have to trust you a little bit or whatever, so it's kind of trying to build that, and a lot of them just become great friends, dude. Yep. Some of the celebrities, I didn't get too super close with, but it's to be able to see them and be like, "Hey man, what's up?"
Yeah.
Hey, what's up? They see you, and hey man, cool feeling like when Slim was rolling through LST, and I'm just walking, everybody, "Oh, Slim," trying to talk to him and that, and he rolls by and rolls down the window, opens the door up, and is like, "What's up, man?" Slapping hands and shit, and everybody's like, "Oh, look," Yeah. I was like, that's a cool feeling.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if he's got a problem, he calls me, and like he was on that Mo. I don't know if you watch it on Netflix or whatever. Mm-hmm. He was on that. It's with that comedian Mo Muhammad. Something. He's a comedian, and he did a series, and he's on the second season. And Slim Tuck was on there, so I'm sitting back watching it because he's based out of Houston. The whole series based out of Houston.
Yeah. And
I'm watching it, and I was like, "Oh shit!" So I just sent him a message real quick, and I was like, "Man, I just saw you on Mo, and he's at 100." It's cool to do stuff like that, dude. So I never thought I'd be sitting here watching Slim on Netflix, and I'm messaging him, texting back and forth.
It's cool with him because I I mean, I don't know him. I've never met him.
Yeah.
But, he seems to be authentic.
Yeah.
And I mean, he's the guy doing his social media, and he's the guy, running all of that. And, he's been on songs with just about everybody.
Yeah.
He's worked with everyone. But, he seems to be, he's got his own style.
Yeah.
He's got his own flow.
Mm-hmm. You know when you hear him.
Absolutely, absolutely. And then his cars, same thing. He's got his own style with the cars.
Exactly.
I mean, he's authentic. He's not following anybody else's.
Well, and I think, dude, that's in life. Like I said, like our previous conversation we just had about, like, be myself, like on a TV show. Like, I think if anybody gets into any of these ventures, and if you're going to be a social media star, or you're just trying to build a business, and you're not even going to be on TV or on YouTube or on, any kind of media, in general, people can tell, whether they see you on their phone or whether they see you on their TV or whether they see you in person, they can tell if you're real. If you look at them in the eyes, and you show the attention to them, you're not on your phone, you're not, you're not just kind of not being yourself, or you're trying to pretend to be something you're not. There's an intuition in all of us that can tell it.
Oh, absolutely.
And so I always hated that saying, fake it till you make it.
Yeah.
I'm like, that doesn't make any damn sense to me.
Not at all.
You say, learn it till you earn it. You know what I mean? You just learn until you can earn, so you keep upping your skills and let the work speak for itself, and you be true to yourself as far as who you are as a person, which is difficult to do, believe it or not. It's to show your bad side too. You got to show, and I openly admit, like I pick on myself, maybe sometimes a little too harshly about, you're an idiot, you know what I mean? But if I tell myself that, it's kind of hard for somebody else to call me an idiot, because I've already called myself an idiot, dude.
It's not going to sting if anybody else.
You're an idiot. Yeah.
Tell me something I don't know.
Yeah. So it doesn't bug you, So I think just being true, and I believe I did pretty good work, like on the TV show and stuff. But I think of a lot of it too, which is just me being goofy and being myself. And even people that knew me, would call me or text me or message me on Facebook afterwards and go, "Oh, he's going to be on TV. Let's see how he acts." They're wanting to see if I was going to act differently, and they go, "Man, that was just you." And I was like, "Yeah, I didn't change anything." You know what I mean? I didn't try to pretend. I basically forgot the cameras were there and just did my thing. And they were like, "Yeah, that's perfect." And I don't know how far up on the favorability rating I was, but I was told by, one of the producers, it was fairly high up there right next to Bill as far as people liking me. Yeah. And even Bill at one point had said, man, he kind of wanted me to come back. He said, man, everybody's missing you, And I just couldn't dedicate the time to it. I really appreciate it and stuff. But I've already made enough of my customers mad. I'm still making them mad now. You want me to piss them off even more,
Can't afford to spend any more time outside.
Yeah. I appreciate it, but I might have to pass. You know what I mean? But it's all from just being yourself. And I try to teach my daughter this. Yeah. Don't try to pretend to be something you're not, because if you do, eventually you're going to get caught.
Yep, absolutely.
They're going to find out you're not who you said you were. So if you're late to work all the time, be that person. Own it. I'm late. You know what I mean? You drink too much, own it. Yeah, I drink too much. If any of your flaws, you own it. But you also own all the positive shit too. Yeah, I'm good at this. I tell you right now, I'm not going to be the best, but I can build a badass interior. And I have total confidence in that. And to be able to say that, and that goes from, like I said, learning how to learn the skill to be able to have that confidence. Yeah. And I think a lot of these kids nowadays are going to be lost, bro, if they don't have them skills, man.
Yeah. And social media is kind of a double-edged sword, because I've met plenty of people, and my brother's met plenty of people that have done pretty well on social media.
Yeah.
They can go places and people know them within the field of whatever they're whatever they're doing. And I'm sure you run across it quite a bit as well, but there's so many of them, man. It's all social media. It's all flash, and it's all of, this. They
Not real.
Always got this great stuff going on, and then you realize that they're no better than you.
Yeah.
They're just,
Yeah.
they got lucky for a little bit on, posting some things and people engaged with their.
A lot of them are worse than you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's because it's not real. I mean, I try to tell like younger nephews and my daughter and stuff all the time, like, don't believe all of that.
Yeah.
That's why, I don't post most of my personal life, or even my personal opinions. I did a little bit during COVID. I think everybody did, but I don't try to post that. Like my daughter, my wife will probably post some pictures of us from being out here. We enjoyed time with y'all and stuff like that, and I'll share them and I'll post some too. But most of the time, my personal life isn't being posted because, to me, if I see somebody that's posting something about how great we're getting along, I love my husband and I love my wife and she's so wonderful, they're having problems, bro.
Absolutely. 100%.
So if you're building it up, you're having issues.
Yeah.
And so don't trust any of that.
No.
And that's hard for these kids to understand because they hear the stories. I hear it. These guys playing video games making $14 million a month. I'm like, and so they want to try to do that.
Yeah.
And so they're trying to do everything they can, but it's still not real.
No. And all these YouTubers that are doing very well for themselves.
Yeah.
It's a full-time job, and there's a lot of them.
7 days a week.
One of your fellow Texans. You got Demo Ranch.
Yeah.
He just retired from YouTube because he said he just wants to go back to being a normal guy and a normal dad.
Mm-hmm.
And he said it's just they're getting too famous.
Yep.
He doesn't want his kids around it.
Yep.
They've had stalking and all sorts of threats and all sorts of weird because there's weird people out there. And
only stalker I got is my wife. So.
But that becomes a full-time job in itself, and he's got to have a team of people to do his editing and his filming and all the, and you constantly have to think of what the next piece of content's going to be, just like the next great job that we're going to try to do around here. But it's a slower pace for this.
Yeah.
If he's putting a video out every single week.
Yeah. Some of them daily. Yeah.
Yeah. You constantly, and you start to run out of ideas, and then the channels dip, and
Well, just like this, just with the podcast, I've had 2 different types of podcasts that we tried. Right, the consistency is very difficult.
Yeah,
and especially like I said, when you're self-employed and finding the time. Like we're doing this pretty late at night because you got a lot going on this weekend.
It's 10 after 1 a.m.
Yeah,
the car show at 7 in the morning.
Yeah, so it's really hard to get that consistency. You'll start off strong always. Be like, yeah, cool, got it. Every Sunday we're going to do it. Every Sunday.
Yeah.
And finally, oh man, we got this Sunday. So I try to explain to my daughter, so you see all these kids, and you think, oh, they're just lucky. No, them little son bitches work hard.
Yep.
And they have to, like I said, or they've got somebody funding a lot of it.
Yeah.
Because you have to. It's with anything. They're not going to just get accidentally famous on YouTube.
No.
They had to put a lot of work, a lot of thought, a lot of effort into that. That's why I'm, my YouTube videos, I was into it. Like I'm doing how-tos, and I'm going to show you how to do this and show you how to do that. And then I get busy, and it's like 6 weeks later, oh shit, I need to make another video. Yeah. You know what I mean? Life gets in the way. And I get so many people asking me to do a YouTube series, man. I'm like, well, even if I did, I don't think what I do is going to draw enough traffic for me to justify paying for a film crew or anything.
Yeah.
To even pay for the crew.
No, exactly.
What am I going to get? 3,000 views a video or 5,000? YouTube ain't paying me nothing on that.
Yeah.
Because it's a very niche market. So I'll do what I can in my spare time just to help people out, But, yeah, it's that whole... I truly worry about like a lot of the kids nowadays, man. The generation coming up. That's what it's crazy. My daughter makes fun of me. I don't know if you've seen it, but on Prime Video, there's a show called Motorheads.
Okay.
And Takira goes, Dad, that's like a teen drama, right? I'm like, it's got cars in it. I'm gonna watch it,
Everything you can.
But what it is kind of like a teen drama, Fast and Furious meets what's that show, Riverdale or something like that. It's like some crazy drama show, but they have these guys, it's about a dad that disappeared or whatever, and he was driving a badass car, caught unbeaten, and so I was like, that's cool. It's got bikes in it, it's got cars in it. I said, that's what these kids need. And I'm really happy that this show's here, so I'm going to watch it and support it. I said, because, if it gets kids back into cars, I think that it, get them doing something with their hands, will give them a sense of purpose, if anything else. You know what I mean? Because right now they're going out and it's either they're doing video games and programming that, God bless them, we need them. But as far as, like, a lot of them aren't doing anything, and a lot of them don't want to drive cars, dude. They don't want to drive cars. They don't want to have kids. I'm just like, you got to have kids or we're going to die out, And driving cars, it was always an independent thing for me. I can go wherever I want to go. I can do whatever I want to do, And they're just like, oh, Uber. It's like, that's crazy to me.
It's been good, at least with, like, the car. I mean, you're in Houston.
Yeah.
It's a huge
huge
car city.
Yeah.
We're a ways outside of Chicago here, but there's a lot of car culture here in Illinois, especially in the Chicagoland area. And, this season, last year, we with the baby and, everything, we really didn't do much getting out of the cars and everything. We still made it to a couple of shows. There's one travel show that we don't really miss. And, we took the baby out to
that's cool.
Even that event, so she got out pretty early on. And now she's been through, she survived the Chicago World of Wheels, our
awesome.
Rama weekend, and pushing her around in her little car and everything. But for us here, this season, I said I really wanted to get out as much as I could and go to everything I could. And, with working on promoting our event that we helped with, it's given me a good excuse to get out and hand out flyers and talk to people and invite people out. And, we want to grow it and have a great event. But getting out, there's a huge Cars and Coffee event about 40 minutes from here that they host. And it's in a parking lot of an old factory.
Yeah.
There's a coffee shop there now, pizza place there. They got a brewery, all sorts of pretty cool stuff.
That's cool. Yeah.
And they host a Cars and Coffee, I want to say twice a month on Sunday. It's a good time. And we go out there and I'm looking around and, there's a lot of imports, a lot of foreign cars there. But everybody's got something done to these cars, and these kids are all proud to talk about what they've done.
That's
to
super
them.
cool.
And, it's them and their friends building them. And, I had a talk with, a local cruise night promoter in the area. He runs a cruise night not far south of here, actually down in Kankakee where we were. Yeah. And I believe you actually met him the other night.
Yeah.
So
he sells cigars and stuff too, right?
He's friends with those guys.
Okay, yeah. So
he's huge on pushing everything for, just get the kids into cars. It doesn't matter what the cars are.
Exactly.
And they're not necessarily going to be into the same cars that...
Well, they can't afford the hot rods and stuff.
No, not at all.
Yeah. Get a little Civic, get a little Jetta or whatever, man, and make it cool.
Yep, make it yours, have fun with it.
Yeah.
And that's what these kids are doing.
Yeah.
But then there's some guys, and they're all younger than me. But they're rolling around in some, like, BMWs. There's more carbon fiber, money in carbon fiber in these BMWs that are sitting there than I got in most of the cars that I have.
What do you do for a living, bro?
Yeah. And they're fast.
Yeah.
There's a whole lot of work done to these things. I mean, it's impressive.
Yeah.
The power you can squeeze out of them and the body kits that are available and wheels and tires.
I love
and
it,
suspensions
dude. I love it.
And,
yeah.
A lot of them are doing interiors in them and everything too. And so that's hot rodding to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cars just get newer.
Yeah. Exactly.
It's not going to be.
And actually, they're a little more smart. They're smarter than a lot of us because of the fact that the technology. They understand the technology. Like I get all the time. I got grand ideas. I wanted to build, even before it came out with Cadillac, I wanted to build like a big screen that went all across. It was touchscreen, had speedometer and all this stuff in it. And do all that. Only problem is I don't know how to do it. It's always trying to piece together stuff and try to make stuff happen, and it's just, it's not happening. And so, but some of these guys can. They know where to source this stuff and how to make it happen. I got to wait till somebody makes it happen before I can use it.
And then you can integrate it into...
Yeah, I can make it look cool and put it in there and make it look real nice, but I can't make the thing myself.
Yeah.
You know, and these younger kids, you know, a lot of them can. Not all of them, but a lot of them can. And I think it's really cool. And I think we do a disservice if we don't appreciate them and just make fun of them. You know?
No, that's just it. And that's part of why I think that there was a huge timeline of car culture starting to die off.
Mm-hmm.
Because not necessarily, I mean, not everybody wants to get with the times.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? And that doesn't mean that we're all going to build the same cars as everybody else.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you keep it diverse,
mm-hmm.
and, you know, but...
I'm fighting it a little bit, yeah.
yeah. But at the end of the day, I mean, if it's cool, it's cool.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, newer cars, older cars,
mm-hmm.
imports, domestics, it doesn't really...
Oh, I like all cars.
I love seeing all sorts of stuff. I mean, I bought that...
the Porsche.
That Porsche, I mean, that thing's...
Yeah.
You know, I've never owned a German car. I love that thing. It's awesome. It's fun to drive. We beat the hell out of it on a daily basis. And
it's cool.
You know, but at the same time, I got a 96 Impala SS. I love taking that thing out and just torching the tires off of it. That's a fun car to drive too.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Then I like older stuff. Like I was talking to some guys tonight, and like, hey, what do you drive? Like Suburban 24s. You know, it drop pretty good. And oh, cool. It's like a newer one. It's an 07, bro. You know, I got an older one. I said, man, I ain't got a whole lot of fancy cars. I mean, every one of my cars aren't stock, you know, but everything I got, I paid for cash. I still like to, make sure I ain't got no payments, because in my business, it's up and down.
Yep.
And you know how pissed off I'm going to be if I got some money in the car and I see it being jerked out by a wrecker, you know. So I get what I can, and I know I'm comfortable with. I can put money into it, and I enjoy it. And I'm still like a kid at heart at that point.
Yeah.
Becca makes fun of me all the time now, because I'm kind of starting up a Harley division too, right? Doing audio, and I'm in the middle of trying to do like R&D and making my own audio kits for them and stuff. Well, building one, and then it's taking me too long, and so I go and buy another bike. Yeah. So I got another bike, and it's bone stock, super nice bike, but I already had everything in the cart to buy for it before I even picked the bike up. It took so much control for me not to hit the buy now button, because I said, what if I don't get the bike? What if he sells it to somebody else? And I already got the stuff. So I'm like, boom. I literally got on the bike, rode it to my house, got off the bike, and hit buy. I can't leave nothing alone, so I'm like a kid at heart too. I've always got to mess with it, and I feel like a kid, and I think that's why I'm liking bikes a lot, because it's a new thing for me, and it kind of helps my mind a little bit. I mean, like I said, I love what I do, but I'm building 6 cars at one time, and it kind of gets a lot sometimes. To keep that creativity is difficult, and so this is an event for me to also have fun and create the creativity on that side, and it gets me away. So I feel like a kid. I feel like we're starting a new little venture. I got my daughter's actually she's just about perfected her sewing techniques, and she's going to be doing motorcycle seats for me.
Awesome.
So she's going to have her own little signature line. We're going to call it BBGB. It's Baby Girl Builds. So she's going to have her own little thing. So she's just about there. She's been working on it for a few months. So
good.
I told her I'm not going to turn her loose until she's got it perfected. So she's already sewed up about 50 Softail seats.
Cool.
And I made her redo about 10 more. So, but not for customers. I bought spools of material and just so, Get
it right now, so you can do it.
Exactly.
Right when the client's doing it.
Yeah, so when you're getting paid for it, you can know what you're doing.
Yep, absolutely.
So it's fun, man. But I'm glad, like I said, that I'm seeing more of them wanting to integrate automotive and motorcycles and all that stuff into the kids now.
Yeah.
It's like we're talking about, if we could, they can integrate. I don't know why they got rid of vocational schools, man.
Yeah, there's a few out there, but man, it's
not
definitely
many.
It's dying. And even my old high school, the auto shop program has shrunk down quite a bit. The whole industrial wing of that building has shrunk down. and they've cut so many programs.
Damn shame.
And now they're trying to build it all back up. And that was one of the things when we had gone out and done a presentation with the auto shop itself.
Yeah.
And brought the truck and everything for the kids to see. What they had approached me with was saying, you know, it all started with, you know, one of the school counselors had spoken with one of my previous teachers from high school. I still work on a car for him. He's got an awesome 65 Impala convertible.
That's awesome. That's cool.
But he had put the word in with me, or for me, that I had the shop, and, you know, we've been doing all these classic cars and everything. And so he came out on his bike the one day.
That's cool.
Cruised all the way out here and
That's
comes
super
walking
cool.
in, and, you know, he's like, I don't know if you remember me. He's like, you know, I vaguely remember you being there, and, you know, and we get to talking, and he's like, listen, this is what we're trying to do. He said, we're really trying to build the industrial wing of the school back up and the automotive program back up. And he's like, I think it'd be really cool to get, you know, graduated alumni to come back and show them what you're doing.
Yeah.
Tell them about why you're doing it. Tell them about what you get to do.
Yeah.
And try to get these kids interested in doing something with cars.
Yeah. That's cool.
And, you know, getting to talk to them about all sorts of. We brought you up. And,
yeah, that's cool.
You know, any of the other, you know, TV friends that we've made, and that's usually a pretty good way to get people interested in something a little bit. They'll bite a little bit on that, but showing the cars and showing the work and showing some of the tooling and equipment.
Yeah, they have to have the passion too. Yeah. That's cool, man. Yeah. That is super cool. That is, like I said, I'm optimistic when I see stuff like that. You know, I'm like, who the hell am I anyway? But I'm just thinking about, you know, in general. But to see that, man, because for a long time, it seemed like for the last decade, it's been going away.
Yeah.
You know, and they're talking about autonomous cars and stuff now. And I'm like, oh, I'm one of the old dudes. I'm never going to have an autonomous car. You know, I want to drive. You know, I don't want to get in, and if I'm going to drive, get on a bus and have somebody else drive me. You know what I mean? I don't need a car to drive itself for me, you know. But I'm sure it's going to happen. When I'm too old to drive, I'm going to have one. I'm saying no now.
It's weird. We actually took one of the autonomous Ubers one time. And
really?
It was weird. Just to try it out.
Yeah.
It was weird.
No control whatsoever. Yeah.
You just watch the steering wheel. It's got plexiglass around it.
Really?
Weird.
Yeah, it's weird. It's cool, though. Cool experience, at least.
Yeah. Well,
how long have we been going?
We're what are we at here?
126.
Just over 2 hours.
Oh yeah, that's good.
Not a bad chat.
Yeah, I enjoyed it, man. It's fun.
I appreciate you coming on.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate you, you know, coming back out and
hanging
out again. And
can't wait for tomorrow, dude. It's gonna be awesome.
It's gonna be a real good time.
Yeah.
Got a lot of people looking forward to meeting you.
That's awesome.
And you know, obviously everybody that you got out with the other night.
Yeah.
And, you know, got the
fun crowd, dude.
They enjoy having you here. And,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, you're both part of the family.
That's awesome.
So it's been great having you up here, and
yes, sir.
We're looking forward to the show, and thanks for coming on and talking about what makes Heath.
Bunch of stupid shit.
That's all any of us have to talk about, right?
Yeah, awesome. Oh yeah.
So, well, thank you again, and
yeah, it's good, brother.
Let's have a good
I
time.
appreciate you.
Show.
Thank you, man. And we'll hopefully we'll see a bunch of people out there tomorrow. That'd be great, dude.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, let's do it.
Cool.
All right, brother.
Thanks, everybody, and we'll be back again soon.